Yeah.
There is one thing we should tell you, Eric. In 2024, it's going to be our 100th anniversary
Yeah.
of our fire department.
Right.
So.
Great.
And we have a lot of activities planned. We will have something here every month for an activity every month for the entire year of 2024. And we're really excited about it.
I'll film as much of that as I can.
That's great.
That's
We
great.
would love that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Good.
So I'm gonna,
let's get started.
Introduce Melissa Braceland from Sharon Hospital, New Vance Health. She is actually the manager of their
Rehab and cardiology, and I oversee stroke, so wear 3 hats. Yeah, I've been there a while.
Right,
Yeah.
she's the stroke coordinator. and
Yeah.
Actually, Sharon Hospital has had great numbers
Yeah.
as far as strokes go over the years, and she's done all the training for all of the EMS. So when we identify a stroke in the field, we're actually really good
Very
at
good.
Knowing what we need to do so that the patients get the best care.
Yeah.
Because Melissa has been training us for most of my career.
2008 I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long
So,
time.
yeah.
Don't date yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I'm so excited to be here. So we are going to talk about stroke. We're going to talk about 2 things. We'll talk about treatment of stroke and then prevention of stroke. So let's start with this. What do these people have in common? They're 52, 25, and 79. Guess.
Good to guess they all had strokes.
They all had strokes. Essentially, a stroke can happen to anyone at any time, so that's why we should be concerned. The stroke is the 5th leading cause of death in the United States. It used to be the 3rd. In 2008, when I became the stroke coordinator, it was the 3rd leading cause of death. Now it's the 5th, so less people die of stroke. However, it is still the leading cause of long-term disability. A stroke is when there is a disruption of blood flow in the brain. So there's 2 types of stroke. There's what we call an ischemic stroke and a hemorrhagic stroke. So an ischemic stroke, I'm going to go to the next slide, is when there's a clot in the artery. So it's when there is a blockage in one of the arteries of the brain. So there's 2 main types of ischemic strokes. There's what we call an embolic stroke. So what that means is that there is a blood clot somewhere else in the body, usually in the heart, up near the carotids, and a piece of that breaks off and goes to the brain and clogs it. Okay, those are called embolic strokes. The other type is called a thrombotic stroke, and it's caused by the artery, the fat, that plaque in the artery building up. So this is due to our lifestyle risks, some lifestyle choices. Has, people who have uncontrolled hypertension, high cholesterol, or diabetes. This ruins our cell walls, and this fatty deposit builds up. So that's what we're going to talk mostly about today, but preventing these 2. So those are the 2 main types of stroke. The 80% of strokes are these clots. So that's a lot of them. A lot of our strokes are clots. The other 20% are hemorrhagic strokes. And a hemorrhagic stroke is when the artery wall ruptures. This uncontrolled high blood pressure is a very common cause, right? So if you have uncontrolled high blood pressure and your arteries are constantly pumping, it's weakening the arteries. And that's why controlling our blood pressure is so important. And then the other thing that I want to spend some time talking about is a TIA. These are also called mini strokes. So this is when someone has stroke symptoms. They may only last 10, 15 minutes, maybe an hour, and then the symptoms go away, okay? So the reason this is because there was a clotting of that artery, and then it either passed if there was an embolic stroke, that clot passed, it dissolved, something happened, and that artery is no longer clogged. And the thing to remember about stroke symptoms is that it's sudden. So if your brain becomes occluded, it happens right away. Stroke is sudden. Right now I'm fine, the next minute I'm not. So balance. So sometimes a loss of balance could be a sign of a stroke. Another sign of a stroke is eyes. Sudden loss of vision can be a stroke. F stands for face. Does the face look uneven? Arm is one arm weak or numb. So the test that we use is you hold both hands up and you see if there's a drip. It doesn't have to be like this. If it's even like this, that could be a sign of a stroke. And then speech. There's a couple of different things that can happen with our S with speech. One, it can be slurred. Oftentimes the person will say something like, I feel like I'm talking like I'm drunk, or my tongue feels thick. And so there's a slurred speech. That's one sign of a stroke. Another sign of a stroke is the words don't come out right. So instead of saying table, I may make up a nonsense word, or I may say wall. So it could be language-based. And sometimes it's just confusion. We had a guy come to the hospital once, and his presenting symptom, his wife brought him in and said for the past 3 days he's been carrying a broom around and I can't get him to put it down. And it ended up being a stroke. And it was where in his brain that his stroke was and made him sort of lose some of his reasoning. And so, why did it take her 3 days? I don't know. Okay.
Probably had to have the house cleaned.
Use the broom. Oh, yes.
And then T is for time, because stroke is an emergency and every minute counts. And then the other thing to remember is T can also stand for terrible headache. If someone has a really bad headache, worst headache of their life, thunderclap headache, that could be the sign of a stroke. Let's talk about preventing it. All right, so let's first talk about the things we can control. So we can't control our age, right? So as we get older, our risk of stroke naturally increases. We can't control our race. So with race, African Americans and Hispanics have a higher prevalence of stroke and higher death rate from stroke. So even if it's the same number of people, there's a higher death rate. When it comes to gender, women, I used to always say you can't control your gender, but we live in a different world now, so I'm not going to say that anymore. But women have a lower risk of men for having stroke before menopause. Okay, so younger ages, at a younger age, men are more likely than women to have a stroke, and then at older ages, women are more likely than men. And part of that is just because women live longer, so there's just more of us. And so, yeah, and so, but that's there. And then family history. So family history is if my parents or my sibling have a stroke, that increases my risk. It's not grandparents, aunts or uncles, it's just parents or siblings. And then if you've had a previous stroke, TIA, or heart attack, that increases your risk. So these are the things that we really can't control. But the things we can control. We can control blood pressure, okay? We can control atrial fibrillation. We can control cholesterol, whether or not we smoke, diabetes, poor circulation, lack of physical activity, and obesity. So heart disease. So basically heart disease is plaque in the arteries that lead to the heart. So it's like the same thing as the brain, right? It's just a different organ. Like if you've got plaque in your heart, you're gonna have plaque most likely in other parts of your body. So as the plaque builds up, artery walls get thicker, and it can reduce the blood flow and supply of oxygen to the cells, and that can cause a heart attack or stroke. But think about the heart attack and a stroke are really very similar. The mechanisms are very similar. No, thank you guys. Yeah, thanks.
Very good. There you go.
All right.
No, I was going to say, this should.
This woman's name is Laura Billon, B-I-L-L-O-N, Billon. a veteran fire investigator and educator from Southern California, and she talked to firefighters and fire marshals at the Emergency Services Center in Falls Village on Saturday, April 20th, which was part of the fire department's 100th anniversary deal. And she was very lively, effervescent, and she kidded Bill Beebe unmercifully. And but it was serious. And what she said was, she said this several times, absence of evidence is not evidence of its absence. So even though in a fire investigation stuff disappears, it burns up, stuff like that, you can still, using forensic science, you can still tease out what actually happened. But in order to do that, she emphasized this over and over again. You have to use the scientific method. You have to use the same method every time so that the body of your casework is consistent. And you have to be able to look at the file sometime later, weeks, months, years, and be able to point to it and say, yes, this is what I did, this is why I did it, this is what it told me, connect the dots. Because ultimately, an arson investigation is law enforcement. So you have to keep in the back of your mind that this is going to be in court, and you have to explain it to a jury. So she was very adamant about making sure the fire scene documentation is consistent among the different investigators, so everybody's doing it the same way, because you got a lot of people, a lot of different departments, a lot of agencies looking at it or whatever. And one thing that was interesting was she said that she called it the 80-20 rule, so that 20% of the evidence is going to be the forensic stuff, and 80% is going to be what you get from the interviews. So she said, she gave an example, and she was kidding a little bit, but this was the example. She said, it's, as the aspiring arsonist, she says, hello, insurance company, I need as much insurance as fire insurance as I can get, and I need it by Saturday. And then she said, well, this is what we call a clue. All right. So, or you interview eyewitnesses and you say, did you see a car peeling out of here? What kind of car? Did you get the plate? Did you notice anybody hanging around, looking like some kind of pyro getting his kicks? She didn't put it that way, but that's what she was getting at. Then she had some pretty cool anecdotes. One of them was there was a fire, or no, there was a big building in California that ran an internet pornography operation, which is unsavory but not illegal. So she got a call from the FBI, and they said they wanted to have 2 of their agents put on fire investigator shirts and tag along on a fire inspection. That, nobody was asking for a fire inspection, but they said, we want you to set up a bogus fire inspection, and we're going to tag along. So while she did the fire inspection, the 2 FBI agents scurried around the building and planted cameras and bugs and stuff. And it turned out the porno business was actually a front for a big methamphetamine operation. So, which has nothing to do with arson. But again, she kept saying this is about law enforcement. So, what else did she say? She said about 25% of fires can be proven to be arson, and those break down into vandalism, attempts to conceal another crime, like you kill somebody and say, oh, I'll burn the place down and then no one will know. excitement or thrill seeking, revenge, profit, and terrorism or some kind of extremism. So, all the kidding aside, I thought the presentation went extremely well, and everybody was hanging on every word. I mean, there were 50, 60 people in there, and they were paying attention. And the questions were good. It was a good presentation. I enjoyed it, and that's about it.
Thank you, Patrick.
Now you can see the glory of the fish car, which has nothing to do with arson, but hey, pretty impressive, huh? I can lay hands on anything I need almost immediately. Well, sort of immediately. Well, kind of immediately. Well, in a manner of speaking. Well, actually, I have to rub it through. But it's all. All right, cut.